Well, Andrew Tate joins me again now. Andrew, good to see you.
Salam alaikum, Piers.
Good to see you. I've genuinely been amazed by the reaction I've had in the streets. Not just here, but I went to Qatar for the World Cup, had the same thing there. A lot of people coming up about Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously, but also a lot of people coming up about you. And they were almost exclusively men, young men, who genuinely see you as a role model, as somebody who inspires them, as somebody they want to be like.
Yep.
So that made me think, the first interview you had was quite combative, the second time a shorter interview less so. I want to try and work out in this one who you are, because it struck me as extraordinary that Google this week revealed some stats for the year. The #1 person whose name followed people Google searching who is in 2022 was Andrew Tate.
Yeah, that's quite remarkable. I think there's a whole swath of the population, especially young men, that feel disenfranchised. They feel disenfranchised with the media machine and the things they're supposed to believe. They don't feel an affinity with the educational systems or the culture. And they look at a person like me who stands up and says the things that many young men think. I haven't put a magic spell on the world. The fact that people like what I say means that they agree with me deep inside. They may be afraid to say it themselves, but I am seen as a bastion of free speech and a bastion for masculinity as a whole, because a lot of men are largely forgotten about.
Do you think you're a force for good, or are you a force in evolution where perhaps you've done and said stuff you shouldn't have done, and as you get older, perhaps as you get bigger, more followed around the world, you sense a responsibility perhaps you didn't have early on?
Well, we all evolve. Every human evolves day by day. You wouldn't be human if you didn't evolve on an hour-by-hour basis. But I do not think I'm a force for good. I absolutely not really know I am a force for good, because I'm a force for truth. And truth is a good thing. Without truth, we're going to end up in absolute tyranny and slavery, and we're already on our way there. I feel like we're starting to combat it. My cancellation was the beginning of a change in public consciousness. Elon having Twitter is another beginning of the change in public consciousness. And anybody who stands up and speaks what they truly believe, even if it's something I don't personally agree with, I think that truth is absolutely important. And people's personal truths and people's personal opinions, even on differing sides of the same opinion, should be heard.
Tell me about your life. You were born to a mixed race couple. Your father was an African-American, a chess player. And your mother, she was from this country.
Correct, yeah. So my father was black chess player. He was in the Air Force. He met my mother here in England. And then I was raised initially in the United States. And then I moved to Luton, England when I was younger. So I've moved around a lot. I've lived an eclectic life in many different scenarios. We've moved around. I've done a lot of different things, lived a lot of different experiences. And
what
I'm
nationality are you? I mean, what do you identify as?
I consider myself British now, but I will say that part of me, the patriotic Brit inside of me, is devastated by the state of the UK currently, and I want to make that very clear. The patriotic Brit in me truly loves this country, and seeing what's happening to it, especially to our major cities, is almost heartbreaking to watch in real time.
In what way?
It's falling apart. This is a failed society. By every metric you can possibly measure, it is absolutely and utterly failing. The cost of living crisis, the crime rates, everything is falling apart. If you compare it to a country like the United Arab Emirates, you compare it to a city like Dubai, London, which should be the greatest city on earth, is failing in absolutely every metric because our leadership is a joke. If you look at Dubai and the UAE, the leadership there is so flawless, so genuinely genius. They saw ahead and have built almost a utopia. And then you look at London, you can't even walk around with a watch on. It's disgusting.
You know, it's very interesting. I was in Qatar for the World Cup. Obviously, a lot of people in England taking a very censorious moral view about the World Cup being in the Middle East at all, because of their laws against homosexuality, because of their treatment of migrant workers. I've got to say, not that I don't share the concerns about those things, of course I do, but I found a lot of the virtue signalling, and I think that's what it was in many cases, about the whole region, actually quite distasteful. Because when I was in Qatar, I thought the World Cup was fantastically well run, incredibly good experience. But a lot of Qataris were saying to me, you know, there's this weird, quaint feeling back in your country that we all want to aspire to behave like that we all want to live in a country with massive drug problems, with massive knife crime issues, with scenes like the European Championships final where it's complete lawlessness going on, where stuff like the NHS, the system of healthcare, is basically collapsing, where the education system is dropping behind, so on and so on and so on. And it's a really interesting perspective. They were like, I know you all think that we want to have your form of democracy and your form of life, but actually, we're fine, thanks.
Absolutely, because it's a failed society and it's godless. I think it's disgusting. We leave our old people to rot in old people's homes, and then we sit there and say we don't have enough money for nurses. I understand this nurse strike very well and how frustrating it can be if you walk into a hospital and the nurse is not prepared to work. But the nurses would be prepared to work at the current wage if they believed this country was spending its money prudently. When you see this country spending its money and just absolutely wasting it, pulling out of thin air to fund proxy wars, God knows where, that has nothing to do with them. Of course, as a nurse, you're going to stand up and say, well, can't I get a pay rise? This country has failed on every metric. And especially our major cities. I've just come to London now. I made it very clear to my private jet pilot. I said, fuel the jet and leave it running, because the second I'm finished talking to peers, I'm leaving this cesspit. It's disgusting. This country, and London as a whole, 10 years ago, was one of the most hospitable cities on earth. Now you cannot walk around safely with a watch on. And you're a full-grown man. You're a full-grown adult. When's the last time there's been a serious problem in your life that you completely ignored and it fixed itself? Never, ever. What are any of our politicians doing to fix any of the problems we're genuinely facing?
Well, I saw today that Sadiq Khan is planning to run again for the third term of office as mayor. All I can say is everyone I know who's had any experience of crime at any level in London in the last few years has had a bad experience of it, of the way it's been handled. You know, I mean, I can give an example. I can reveal this now. I've talked for 18 months. I got a specific death threat on one of my son's Instagram pages in public, a public comment. And it was very specific about what this person was going to do. Yeah. I couldn't use the police to evade him. We know where you live. We're going to come and kill you. And then a second one threatening my son and his mother, my ex-wife. I called in the police. I thought, I'm not having them putting death threats on my son's. Sure. I called the police. Police investigated this. They arrested somebody over a year ago. And then I heard from the police this week that despite 18 months of investigation, of a publicly posted comment on Instagram threatening to kill me, on my son's Instagram, that they will not be able to pursue the case. Now, and I thought, imagine, I'm high profile. This was a front page of the Sun newspaper, this story.
If that same man called a transgender person the wrong pronouns, he would be in trouble.
Right.
So doesn't it just show how absolutely asinine and banal our legal system has become? That would never happen in a country like United Arab Emirates, the place I'm now residing in, Dubai, where the leadership has common sense. And I'm saying that all the leadership structures, doesn't matter if it's Labour or Conservative, across all of it in this nation have completely and utterly failed. Sadiq Khan is a loser, because when you have a city which is losing, which London is losing in all metrics across its competitive cities around the world, and you're in charge of it, by extension, you're a loser. I will tell you right now, instead of virtue signaling and giving Qatar a hard time over their religious beliefs, what we should be doing is a treaty with Qatar to build a prison deep in the desert. Make me mayor of London. We'll make a prison deep in the desert. And if you're caught with a knife or robbing someone, you can go do 25 years with one meal a day in the scorching sun. And then what we'll do is we'll put cameras there and we'll interview you once a week and broadcast that out to the nation and see if you change your mind and make people understand that this is a country that should be respected and our laws should be respected. Instead, what happens? What has Sadiq or any of the people in charge of this country actually done to fix any of our issues besides sit around and talk? Nothing. None of them have done anything, but they seem ultra concerned with finding money for proxy wars, ultra concerned with rainbow flags in another country that is uninterested in them, and their priorities are completely messed up. Of course the ambulance people are. Of course the ambulance drivers are striking. Of course the nurses are striking. Nobody cares about the most important things in this nation. It's a failing country in real time, and that's why I've left.
What about the specific allegation? By the way, I don't disagree with a lot of that, because I do think this country is in big trouble. And I do think that one of the problems is people think if they do have a crime against them, nobody cares anymore.
I know nobody cares. I have specific examples and people who I know personally. Absolutely and utterly nobody cares. I was in Harrods yesterday and someone tried to rob someone's watch in the middle of the store. I walk around with I have a security team of 6 full-grown men, plus me and my brother, 8 military-age males, all over 110 kilos, big men, just so I can walk around this city. It's absolutely unacceptable.
What about the issue of race? And I mentioned that in the context of the Harry and Meghan ongoing debate, their war with the royal family, war against the monarchy, their specific, constant referencing to the fact that they believe they were driven out of here because of racism in Britain. What do you make of that debate?
That's absolute fallacy.
And you're from a mixed race background yourself.
Correct. I'm from a mixed race background myself. And while we're discussing the leaders of the UK, although I do think they're doing a terrible job, it's kind of hard for Meghan to say that the UK is a racist country when the leader of the UK is darker skinned than her and the mayor of London is darker skinned than her. And I am a person who's probably darker skinned than her, and I've never experienced any kind of bigotry against myself besides the fact I'm a straight male. I'll get bigotry for that before I'll get bigotry for my skin color. I think it's just a cop-out, and her not wanting to be perspicacious and self-reflective enough to understand that she has attacked an age-old institution, and there are people who are very patriotic about that institution. And by attacking it and bringing a degree of distaste to it, there's going to be people who don't like her. And if you're a dislikable person, you can't just instantly stand up and say it's because of my skin color. It might be because of your actions and some of the things you've said.
I mean, I think there's probably no doubt she's had racism on social media because it's...
Who hasn't, Piers?
It's a cesspit.
You probably have.
Well, as I said just now, I've had death threats on social media and no one seemed to care very much.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably inarguable. My issue with what they've both been doing is if you're going to make allegations against an institution like the royal family and the monarchy, you've got to actually provide some evidence. You can't just spray gun this thing out there and say, well, somebody was racist.
Yeah, and airing dirty laundry is never going to be respected by the populace, and being a tattletale is never going to be respected by the populace. And I think the problem with the modern world we're living in is a lot of age-old traditions are being destroyed in real time. It doesn't matter what the tradition is. Most of them are being eroded. And something like the British royal family, which has been around for a very long time, is an age-old tradition. One of the things holding the UK together, one of the last things we have, to sit and detriment it and to sit and insult it and to give away secrets from inside of it and try and paint a negative image of it is going to upset a lot of people. And you have to be prepared for that backlash. You can't say, I've done things that upset people, but it's nothing to do with what I've done. It's purely because of my skin color. Also, it's kind of ironic that she's doing that because she's not particularly dark-skinned. It's kind of funny to watch her sit and say,
yeah,
race.
I think the truth is, I don't know what... Look, you can say that. I can't. The reality of it is, I just don't know what the specifics of the racism she says she's had because we've not seen any evidence.
The universe is a funny place, Piers. If you're looking for something, you're going to find it, right? When I got cancelled, when they attacked me unfairly, lied about me across the entire mainstream media, deleted me from social media so I couldn't defend myself, and lied about me repeatedly, I could have stood up and said, it's because I'm brown. I didn't do that. I sat and said, okay, there's people who misunderstand my message. My message is a positive one. People misunderstand me. Let me self-reflect and understand that, yes, perhaps this said a long time ago was said in the wrong way. Perhaps this was misunderstood. Perhaps people don't understand this. I could have just copped out and could have just been refusing to self-reflect on any level and said, it's because I'm brown, that's why they did it. But that's not the mature way to be as an adult.
What did you think of the Jeremy Clarkson furore where he wrote what I think most people, but including him belatedly after he'd published it and written the column, he did make an analogy from a Game of Thrones scene, which most people, I think, did find crossed a line and was deeply offensive. I think it crossed a line. What do you think?
Yeah, I understand why people feel that. But when you attack an institution as old as the British royal family, you're attacking patriotism in and of itself for one of the most respected countries or previously most respected countries on earth, and you're going to have some visceral reactions. Perhaps Jeremy Clarkson is too famous and too well-renowned to say those kind of things, but there's a lot of people who genuinely feel that way, and that's why he said it. And this is what happens when you attack age-old institutions in any country.
Should he have apologised?
That's a good question. It looks like he did. Personally, I think as a man, you should stand up, say what you mean what you say. I don't think you should ever apologise for anything you've ever said. Even me.
What if you say something truly very offensive and you actually do regret it?
If you truly regret it, then yeah, okay, you can apologize. But if at the time you meant it, then the best thing you can do is say, look, I've just changed my mind. I no longer feel that way. But at the time, that's how I felt. And I'm the person who says what he feels. And that's what I felt at the time. And I apologize that offended you.